Hey, hello everyone. We're sorry for the late start today. But thank you to everybody that has joined in tonight for our Let's Talk About It webinar. I know I'm logged in under Cindy, but my name is Demaya Woodmore. I am the Director of Operations and Patient Services for the LFA Indiana chapter, and I'll be your facilitator for tonight. And just before we get started, for anyone that has any questions for our presenter Tom tonight, please just put your questions in the Q&A box. And then at the end, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. So I am super excited to introduce our presenter tonight. We have Tom Adamson. He is the Consumer Division Program Manager for Brown & Brown Absence Service Group. And he is also one of our board members for the LFA Indiana chapter. So without further ado, Tom, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Demaya. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight, this webinar series. I really appreciate it, Demaya, for giving me the opportunity to talk about a very important topic that I find is extremely important for a lot of folks. And it is, let me just share my screen here. So tonight we're going to be talking about navigating Social Security disability benefits. As Demaya mentioned, I'm with Brown & Brown Absence Services Group. I've been in this industry of Social Security disability benefits for about 9 years now. I've been with the organization that I'm with now for around 4 years. And I am, yes, the program manager for our, what we call our consumer division. So I manage a lot of our partnerships with medical facilities and other institutions that may want to refer people to us who may be interested in Social Security disability. So we'll get right into it. Just a brief introduction about the organization that I'm with. Brown & Brown Absence Services Group focuses on social security disability advocacy and representation services. So we help people, like a lot of different organizations out there, with and through the social security disability process. We represent people and we advocate on their behalf, just like many other law firms out there or other disability law firms, advocacy organizations, that sort of thing. We help people nationwide. So in every single state. We also provide Medicare insurance services. That includes Medicare education, enrollment support. We have licensed agents that provide individuals with consultations to help them better understand their Medicare options. And that's important with regard to Social Security disability. And we'll get into that because when someone's approved for Social Security disability, SSDI, they eventually become eligible for Medicare. So we end up helping people through that process as well. One of the biggest questions I get asked is, what is Social Security disability? And it's an extremely important benefit for if and when someone does become unable to work due to a disabling circumstance, illness or injury. It's a Social Security program that generally provides monthly benefits to people who are what's called insured. And generally that means someone who has worked and contributed into Social Security taxes through their payroll deductions for at least 5 out of the last 10 years. Now, there is another program under Social Security where if someone has not worked at least 5 out of the last 10 years, that's called the Social Security Supplemental Income Program. SSI for short, but just for this particular talk, we'll talk about exclusively SSDI. So number one, the person is insured. They generally have had Social Security taxes withheld from their paychecks for at least 5 out of the last 10 years. And they're unable to work due to a disabling condition. That can be, an illness or an injury or something that they've been recently diagnosed with that is preventing them from not only doing the work that they have been doing, but also the work other work that may be out there. So it is an insurance benefit that people pay into if and when they do become unable to work. Very important. Someone doesn't have, someone loses their income due to disability or an illness. They need some way to have some sort of monthly income to provide for themselves and their family. And Social Security disability is that program. Now, there are other programs out there that are either through someone's employer, long-term disability or short-term disability, and somebody could actually file for both of those programs in conjunction with each other. So an individual may get short-term or long-term disability through their employer, and may also want to look into Social Security disability as well. Now, another thing is a lot of people like to know, what are the benefits of an SSDI award? Is it going to negatively affect my retirement income for when I, decide to retire one day? And the thing about Social Security disability is not applying for it actually will potentially have a negative impact, or being awarded Social Security disability may have a negative impact on your retirement benefit in later years, because what happens when you get approved for Social Security disability, Social Security essentially freezes your earnings record, which allows the person to maintain the amount of money that they would be receiving at their later years during retirement. So it doesn't take away from your retirement. It either maintains it or potentially increases it. So that's one highlight of being approved for Social Security disability. Another benefit of SSDI is monthly income. Someone's not able to work due to a disabling circumstance. They need a way to provide for themselves. If approved, no matter what stage, generally someone is approved a monthly benefit. And their dependents and spouse may also be eligible for monthly benefits as well. And that average monthly benefit can be around $1,200 a month, with a maximum of around $3,000 a month. Could be a little bit less depending on how much the person worked and that sort of thing. The other highlight too is individuals may be eligible for what's called retroactive compensation or back pay. A disability claim, an SSDI claim, can take some months to years, and Social Security tends to pay retroactively for all the months that it's taking your claim to be approved, and for all the months that it may take for your claim to kind of go through the process. So some individual may be eligible for a lump sum payment through Social Security once they are approved, depending on their circumstance, how long their claim has been pending, in addition to those ongoing benefits. Another highlight is Medicare. People become eligible for Medicare after around 24 months of receiving Social Security disability. So a lot of folks may not have health insurance after they have stopped working, and being approved for Social Security disability allows that person, after a certain waiting period, to become eligible for Medicare coverage, even if you're under the age of 65, which is extremely helpful. Also, there's a cost of living adjustment that happens from time to time. That's an annual percentage increase of the amount that the person is receiving each month. So Social Security will increase the benefit amount that you receive each month, or that someone receives each month, if they are approved, and there is a cost of living adjustment that has been applied by Social Security. There's also return to work incentives. So if someone is unable to work and receiving SSDI, Social Security has programs in place to try to help people transition back into the workforce. That includes vocational rehab, career counseling, and really a lot of different programs to get people trying to get back to work. And in addition to that, Social Security will tend to continue to pay people their monthly benefit while they're trying to transition back to work. So those are just a few of the highlights of Social Security disability. And again, what are the primary qualifications? Generally, someone's condition, that someone who's looking to file for Social Security disability, what Social Security looks for is, is this individual going to be unable to work for at least 12 months or longer due to their circumstance, due to their disabling condition? Have they worked and paid into Social Security at least 5 out of the last 10 years, if not more? And do they fit the definition of disability that is set by Social Security, which is generally you can't do the work that you were previously doing, and you can't adjust to any other work due to your disabling circumstances. And just to dive in a little bit deeper for the SSDI eligibility, generally someone is not working. However, there is a circumstance where you can be earning just under around $1,300 a month and still be technically eligible to apply. Any more over that, Social Security may just automatically deny the claim due to earning too much from working. But usually the individual is not currently working and is expecting to be out of work or unable to work for 12 months or longer. Again, you cannot perform any of your previous work, adjust to any other work due to a disabling condition, and have worked at least 5 out of the last 10 years and paid into Social Security. And those deductions, those FICA, OA, SDI taxes that you see on the screen there, those are payroll deductions that are usually taken out through payroll deductions. Some employers do not withhold FICA or OASDI, so always keep that in mind. Some teachers unions or firefighters or police officers, in some circumstances, there are some jobs that don't pay into Social Security. So it's always good to be mindful of that. And if you are seeking representation, or if you know someone that's seeking representation for a disability claim, that's something that the disability advocate will kind of screen the individual for, to make sure that they have worked and paid into Social Security at least 5 out of the last 10 years. Another good thing to understand too is, when someone is filing for Social Security disability, there's a few common conditions that people generally apply for, or a combination of a lot of different conditions. Some being musculoskeletal, autoimmune diseases, degenerative spine conditions, neurological respiratory disorders like COPD, cardiovascular heart issues, many different types of cancers, mental and behavioral health conditions. And also it could be a combination of a lot of these things. It's not just, one thing that may be preventing someone from working. It may be a series of different things that may result in someone being unable to work. And it's important to note, if anyone is filing for Social Security disability, to include all the conditions that may prevent that individual from being unable to work. You may think it's a small condition or something along those lines, but it may actually heighten the chances of Social Security approval. So it's always important to include any condition when and if filing. So to understand what the claim process may look like. So this is kind of a long way of kind of understanding what the different levels are through the Social Security process. Generally, someone starts at what's called the initial application level. That is generally filed online, whether a person does it by themselves or they have an advocate or some representative actually do that for them. It is a long and complicated, generally, application that's done online. But usually it's around 50 or more questions. It can take, usually, a representative would be able to do it in less than an hour, about an hour or so, but it is pretty thorough. And then there is a lot of information that's needed in that application. So that's why it's always good to have someone who's versed in Social Security disability actually help you with the process. So initial application, if that turns into a favorable decision after a certain waiting period, after Social Security reviews medical records, then benefits are awarded to the individual, and the individual will continue to receive monthly ongoing benefits, so as long as they are unable to work under Social Security's rules. However, if the initial application is denied, you do have the option to appeal. That appeal level is called the reconsideration level. Social Security will take into account any new evidence, and evidence would be medical records, doctor's notes, new diagnoses, and that sort of thing. If that's a favorable decision, benefits would be awarded to the individual. A step down from that is if that's unfavorable, the next appeal is the hearing level, which is the level at which an individual would be going in front of what's called an administrative law judge, who will hear the case, look at the facts of the person's circumstance, look at their work history, look at their medical records, and make a determination that way. Generally, before COVID and everything was sort of remote, before everything is remote now, most of those hearings used to take place actually in person in an office room setting. Most of those hearings now in front of the administrative law judge are actually remote. They're either through video teleconference, like we're doing here, where the judge is in one place, the claimant is in one place, and their representative, if they are represented, is either with them or maybe in another location. And if that's a favorable decision, benefits are awarded there. The next level, if that is denied, goes to the appeals council review. People do have the option to appeal with the judge's decision. Most of the time, claims do get approved within the initial reconsideration or the hearing level. All right. So a few things to note. There are special circumstances that Social Security looks at to see if benefits should be expedited. They have what's called a compassionate allowance scenario. And these are for diagnoses that include ALS, certain types of aggressive cancers, organ transplants, and that sort of thing. There's also another category for terminal illnesses, which is stage 4 type cancers, which get expedited, and it's important to flag those conditions if and when someone has been diagnosed and they are applying. And a representative, someone who is helping the person through that process, has a way to directly interact with Social Security to let the administration know that this person has been diagnosed with a compassionate allowance scenario or a terminal illness condition. The other circumstance is dire need. So a dire need is someone who may be, in a tough situation where they might be homeless, in need of, dire income, but they are, they're unable to their work. They don't have any source of income. They might be homeless, so they're in a circumstance where they need their claim expedited. All right. So from here, a lot of people say, when should I look to, seek representation? When should I look to file? When should I, reach out to someone who may be able to help me through this process? One of those scenarios is if a person is unable to work or has been unable to work due to a disabling circumstance or condition. Maybe that's the time to, reach out to, a representative. Or someone, within the Social Security disability advocacy space, a law firm or a disability group like Brown & Brown, to learn more about the services provided. So not all disability representatives are the same. Some may, complete the whole process for you, file your application. Some may have you do it on your own, and then only handle if your claim has been denied. So it's always good to understand who you're working with. Another circumstance is if you already have a claim pending, if an individual already has a claim that's already been filed, they don't have anybody actually helping them through the process, they're not getting through to Social Security, that's a circumstance where you may need some additional support, so you don't have to bear the burden of actually handling the claim on your own. There is support out there to offer you the assistance and really move the claim forward. Another circumstance is if a person has been denied at the initial or the reconsideration level, they may want to start to get some, start to think about maybe it's best that I have someone who's versed in this area to actually help me through this process, help me with the forms, help me with any paperwork that needs to get done, follow up with Social Security on a regular basis. And this whole, Social Security disability process can be handled by yourself, by someone other than, a representative, but it's always helpful to have representation, which is always nice. And then if you need representation at the hearing level, a lot of administrative law judges make the person or want the person to have a representative with them who's versed in Social Security law, who understands the proceedings. So it's very important to have a representative or advocate to represent the individual if they do have a hearing. So going on to the claim process, as I mentioned, initial reconsideration hearing level, it starts at the initial application level. And that initial application can be initiated a few ways. The application is online at ssa.gov. Someone can find very easily the application there, work through it themselves. The other recommended way is to seek, professional representation to actually handle the process for you. They'll fill in your application or the person's application. They'll follow up with Social Security. They'll, complete and submit medical records and send medical records, request medical records from Social Security and the doctors. But the actual application is online at ssa.gov. Another way is to call the local Social Security office, or you can come in for a local office visit. Office visits are kind of less and less now, but they're starting to kind of reopen Social Security. And then just to highlight the advantages of having support throughout the process, you have someone who's actually going to complete and submit the application on your behalf or the person's behalf. The representative or the advocate is going to make sure that a thorough application is submitted. I've heard from claimants that it takes, if they're filing it on their own, the initial application, it could take them days because it's very thorough. We make sure, or any representative would make sure that the client is unaware, is aware of all the information that might be needed to complete a thorough and complete application. There's guidance and support every step of the way, so the claimant isn't, bearing the burden of, a disabling condition, but also bearing the burden of trying to work through this process on their own. Ongoing status updates are very helpful. Social Security, doesn't reach out to people very, very often unless they do need something. With having an advocate or someone helping you, you're going to get regular claim status updates, either on a monthly, bi-monthly basis to ensure, if the person's seeing any new doctors or any new, physical therapist or anything like that. That needs to be flagged to Social Security so they can obtain those medical records. And the big one is just the client doesn't have to handle it on their own. So that's a very important aspect of having someone help you through the process if and when you are looking to have that actually done. So the initial application process, someone submits an application through Social Security or has a representative do for them. What happens from there? So the claim is sent or the information is sent to what's called the Disability Determination Services, DDS, assigned to a disability examiner at Social Security. That examiner is responsible for obtaining medical records. So when a person fills out a disability application, they're putting in all their doctors, who they treat with, the medications that they're on, and so on and so forth. So that disability examiner is responsible for requesting those medical records. That's why it's super thorough or super important to have a thorough application, because you want to make sure that all the doctors' names are correct, all the treating physicians are correct, any treating providers, all their addresses and everything is very thorough and complete to make sure that they can complete the entire file to get a full picture of what is what is going on with the individual. Also, the disability examiner may request a few other things called a function report. That is something that the client would fill out. A representative would help them if need be. If they are being representative, a function report it's a response to what can a person do from a work perspective. How much can they lift? How much can they, stand? How long can they sit for? That sort of thing. So it's relating to work-related activities. A work history report is a report that goes over essentially the jobs that a person did over the last 15 years or so. Another situation is a consultative exam. That may take place if the person who's filing for SSDI may not have enough medical records, where Social Security, what they'll do is they'll actually have that person go see one of Social Security doctors to actually evaluate them to get a clearer picture of what's happening with that individual to see if they meet Social Security's definition of disability. And after all that, generally the process at the initial application level, when you do file a claim until a decision is made on the claim, could take anywhere from 3 to 6 to 9 months. So it is a pretty long process. And just having that extra support along the way is very helpful, but it can take a little bit of time to actually get a decision on a claim. But very important to have medical records from treating physician, and Social Security generally requests those. From there, as I mentioned, if the initial application is denied after a few months, the person does have the option to request for a reconsideration. And that's a complete review of the claim. So you basically fill out a form saying, I'd like to appeal this initial application denial. I still believe I'm disabled and will continue to be disabled. And what will happen from there is they'll request a new evidence, and the claim is re-looked at by someone who didn't take part in the initial application review. Now, if the reconsideration is denied, and just to kind of give folks some stats, if you are filing, or people that do file an SSDI application, the award rate at which claims do get approved, I think the national average is around 30%. So of 100 people that apply, maybe 30% will get approved, and then the remaining may be denied, and then potentially awarded at the later level. So there is a high rate of denial just due to Social Security's strict definition of disability. But a denial at the initial level or the reconsideration level does not stop the claim. There is these appeals, one being the reconsideration. So if the reconsideration is denied, another important factor in the process is the claimant can request a hearing. And that's if the person disagrees with the denial and they'd like to have a hearing. And basically an administrative law judge who had no part in the original determination will kind of review the case and conduct a hearing. The advantages here of representation, of having someone actually help, it's very important because the group can actually request and submit medical records on the client's behalf. They can assist in the preparation of the claim to present in front of the judge, make sure that the client themselves are thoroughly prepared for the hearing. Generally, the client, if they do go in front of a disability judge, is represented by an attorney that is very familiar with the hearing office, the hearing judge, and usually they're very well versed in Social Security disability in general. Another advantage is that a representative has the option to request what's called an on-the-record decision, where they essentially write a brief or a few-page document outlining the medical records, why it relates to this person being unable to work, how it relates to Social Security law, and maybe why an actual formal proceeding shouldn't take place, that the judge should award the claim without even having to go to a hearing, just based on the medical records that they have. So that's a very important tool in the toolkit for sure. All right. So we went through all the different levels of SSDI, what happens through the denial stages, and what happens if approved. But the real benefits of having someone help you is the representative may have experience or does have experience in working with Social Security. Generally, there's a much higher approval rating if someone is being represented by someone. It relieves that burden of filing, and there's support throughout the entire claim process, which is very important. Representation at the hearing level, also very important to have someone who's well versed in Social Security law. Some organizations that help people through the Social Security disability process may have a client portal where clients can interact with their advocate or with their representative directly instead of even having to pick up the phone. Just for instance, Brown & Brown, we have what's called our Client Success Center, where clients can easily just go online, review their claim status, the next steps in the process, exchange messages virtually with their client advocate. They can receive text message updates, communicate directly, submit medical records. So it's just a level above having to handle it on their own. So it's always important to review your options. Everyone does have the opportunity to submit a claim on their own behalf. Many people do, but always that there is that, a lot of people don't know that there are groups out there that will help them throughout the entire process. So some people like to know, what happens if I do reach out to a organization that helps people through the Social Security process? So an individual will call, a disability group that might help them with the process. That call may go to a representative who's very knowledgeable about Social Security and will essentially screen that person over the phone to understand their eligibility, to make sure if they do have a viable claim for Social Security benefits. From there, the individual will receive representation forms from the group that they're looking to get help from. Those representation forms include medical release forms, fee agreement forms, and just forms needed to start and initiate the process and actually hire that representative to help them through the process. The client fills out those forms, they send them back, and then from there, a representative from the organization will give that person a call to set up a time to actually complete and submit the application with them over the phone. So it's great to have everything over the phone or through email instead of actually having to sit down and kind of complete it yourself. There are services out there to actually facilitate that for the client. So I just have some information here about how to, if anybody's interested in learning more about Social Security disability or needs some assistance throughout the process, there's plenty of organizations out there. I included our information. If anybody has any direct questions, we can be reached by phone, by email, that sort of thing. I can be emailed directly, happy to answer any questions. But we're also here to Brown & Brown to help people with any questions they have regarding Social Security disability, or if they need help through Medicare. So happy to take any questions, comments. Tamaya, I appreciate the time.
I was muted. Thank you.
No worries.
That was very, very informal. I learned a lot from your presentation, so thank you so much for that. We do have a few questions that people put in our Q&A. Tom, I don't know if you're able to see it as well, but our first question that we have is from Carrie Ann, and she said, I know the monthly income limit for those on SSDI is published, but how does this work if a potential employer gives a 1099 instead of a W-2?
Yeah, so that's a good question. A lot of people are self-employed or actually may own their own business. So if they are receiving a 1099, Social Security may have that individual submit that paperwork to Social Security to ensure that they're under that income threshold. And if they are over that income threshold, it may result in a technical denial. But you always want to be upfront with Social Security if there is any income happening from being employed, because they may look to, if a person is approved, they may look to recoup that money back if they do find out that the person was earning over a certain amount. So generally, if it's not reported to Social Security, it's good to kind of let them know if any income is being generated through employment.
Got it. Another question we have is, I think you might have kind of talked about it a little bit in your presentation, but what is the expected turnaround time to receive a response from thoroughly completed SSDI application?
So usually the from application submittal to actual decision can vary widely. With Social Security kind of being remote now, the wait times have been extremely long compared to 2019, 2018. So usually it's anywhere from like 3 to 9 months, even longer, somewhere in between there. But it's really on a case-by-case basis. So a few months to up to maybe 9 months, 6 months. Generally, we like to say anywhere from like 4 to 6 months from the date of the actual claim submission to an actual final decision on the initial application.
See, another question we have is from John, and he has lupus, which comes and goes. So he wants to know, would he qualify?
Yeah, so it's not really that cut and dry. I can say from my personal experience, we've represented tens of thousands of people over the years, and plenty of people who have been diagnosed with lupus have been approved for Social Security benefits. But the best thing to do is, reach out to a group in your area, or feel free to give our organization a call, and just a few more questions would need to be asked to see, if you meet those qualifications. And Social Security ultimately makes that determination based on medical records and that sort of thing.
Right. Great. Okay. We have another question from Kimberly, and she wants to know how SSDI affects retirement. Does it affect your pension? And does payment change because you've received SSDI at age 62?
Yeah, so usually what I like to say is if someone is not applying for Social Security disability and they're not working and they're unable to work, that would negatively affect their Social Security retirement because every month that you're not working, Social Security has zeros in your earnings record, which will actually lower your potential retirement amount in later years. If approved for Social Security disability, they freeze that earnings record, so it maintains the amount and or increases. So it's actually a benefit to being approved. Regarding a pension, each pension is different. Some pensions do have a Social Security offset. They may or may not, or they'll reduce the amount that you receive based on your Social Security amount monthly. So that's on a case-by-case basis also. And then just the second question, or the third question about does the payment change because you've received SSDI? So the more that you work, the more that you pay into Social Security. Typically, the potential higher your actual Social Security amount would be. So if that answers that question, if you are filing at the age of 62, people who are over the age of 55 have tend to have a higher approval rate of actually being approved, but the payment may change, or the amount that you receive when you file at 62 may be greater than if you were to file at the age of, say, 50.
Right. Okay. And I see in the questions and comments, some people are asking if we can give the slides. So usually we do post this webinar on lupusindiana.org. So you guys will be able to go back and look at the presentation because we are recording it. Yep. But if you guys would like the slides, I can definitely, I'm pretty sure Tom has no issue with emailing me the slides, and I can give you guys the slides if you want them in hand. So just to answer a few people's questions on that.
Yep. Demai, I do see a question about turning 67. Just to, yes. It looks like John had mentioned, if I go out on disability when I'm 67. So when applying for Social Security disability, the maximum age that someone can apply is generally around 64. And after 65, they're essentially automatically eligible for Social Security retirement. So folks that are applying for Social Security disability, SSDI, are generally between the ages of like 18 and 64. If you're over the age of 65, you essentially are able to apply for early or regular retirement or wait.
Thank you for addressing that. See if I missed any. Oh, we do have one question.
Yep.
Someone has a family member who needs to apply, but she doesn't have a lot of medical records because she is underinsured and has a hard time getting to doctors. Is this a major hindrance with getting SSDI?
Yeah, so it It may be, but it may be not, because Social Security does have the option to send that person to have what's called a consultative exam. So the individual, they may not have medical records, but Social Security will be able to set them up with one of their doctors who will, have a physical of them, either mental or physical, depending on the person's disabling conditions. So Social Security has protocols built in for those circumstances. And the consultative exam, where they set them up with Social Security's doctors to review them, is that option. So I wouldn't not apply because of that reason. I would, if someone is in a circumstance where they need income to supplement themselves, they're unable to work due to some sort of disabling mental or physical condition, it's definitely worth trying to apply for that benefit. Yep.
Thank you. Did I miss any questions from anybody? I think this is a personal question to you. Do you charge a flat fee or percentage for your services?
Yep. So like most disability organizations, the organization is only paid if the organization is able to get the client approved benefits, and only if they're approved past due benefits as well. So retroactive compensation, like a lump sum, in addition to those monthly benefits. So there's no out-of-pocket costs, there's no upfront costs, there's no retainer fees or anything like that. Usually an organization would adhere to Social Security's fee agreement that they've created, which states that the representative is entitled to 25% out of the past due benefits, or $6,000, whichever is less. So some folks who get approved may receive like $50,000 in back pay, 75, 25, and that $6,000 is built in to not be able to get 25% of, say, $50,000 or so. And Social Security generally pays the representative directly out of those past due benefits. So it's not like the client's writing a check or anything like that. And it's only if we're able to get the client approved. If we're not, for whatever reason, there's no fee payable to the representative. Hope that answers that.
I think that was the last question. So I will send these slides to everyone that's on the webinar today. So I'll make sure to send a email to everyone so everyone can have the slides and have Tom's information if you guys would like to ask him more questions. And unless we have any last minute questions that anyone wants to ask, I think that is the end. Thank you so much, Tom, again, for taking time out of your business. Definitely informative for sure.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everyone else that joined in tonight for our Let's Talk About It webinar. And again, I will be sending out an email to everyone with the slides so you guys can have Tom's information and if you want to ask him any more questions. So thank you guys so much for joining tonight, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, Demaya. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Be well.